Trade evolutions kind of suck, if we're completely honest. Like, they add nothing to the game.
You're right, Saiga. They are bullshit. For America. Trade evolutions were designed with the Japanese culture in mind, and they actually succeeded in Japan for the same reason that 3DS Street Pass succeeded. The idea behind Pokemon game design was that you, in real life, were supposed to mimic what the protagonist was doing in the game. That is to say, you were supposed to wander around with your Game Boy in pocket and find other people with their Game Boys in their pocket and just start talking about Pokemon. And then you'd fight, and then you'd trade. And that only works because Japan is a very dense country. Children and adults walk everywhere. They take public transit everywhere. They spend time at arcades. They spend time at public baths. Everything in Japan is public. Two YouTubers, CDogVA and Giguk, actually moved to Japan and talked about their experiences. And one of the things that stuck with me is that they said in Japan, your home is basically the place you sleep. Your home is kind of like a permanent hotel room. Everything else is done out. You eat out, you socialize out, you work out, you do your work out. There's basically no reason to stay at home in Japan. Even if you're going to use a computer and play an online game, you can do that in an internet cafe, which is usually attached to an arcade or some other building. And since that culture is so based on interacting with other people, the idea of trade evolutions was not that bad of an idea. Because the idea was that if Pokemon was big enough, you could just randomly chance running into someone in order to trade with them. And that was Satoshi Tajiri's original conception of this mechanic. Of course, that's not exactly what we're getting now, because we have Nintendo selling dual packs as if it's the thing you're supposed to do. Plus, the culture in Japan is shifting very rapidly under the COVID pandemic. So it might just be that the idea of trade evolutions, and in fact the idea of Street Pass-style gameplay, might be past its prime. Or at least until it's safe to go outside again. But yeah, here in America, we live a very home-centric lifestyle, and they just don't live that sort of lifestyle in Japan. And so while here, trade evolutions meant basically buying another copy, or explicitly knowing a friend who had the other copy of the game, in Japan, the chances that you would run into someone with the other copy of the game were really, really high. I actually have a friend in Japan who talked about growing up with Pokemon, and the idea that you wouldn't be able to get a trade evolution never even crossed her mind, because there were so many kids she didn't even know, that she would run into and see them playing Pokemon and just ask about it. I think it's kind of interesting that as video game development becomes more and more international, we become more aware of things that only work in one culture and another. And that's just not like translation and localization things, but actual gameplay mechanics.